Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today we're going to deal with a Shakespeare Tiger. Now this is one of their lower entry reels. This is one that's oftentimes sold in a combination pack. For whatever reason, this one is just really tight. And this one is kind of special. It's been part of a youth angler program that our fishing club runs. And well, all kinds of things happen with these reels. I'm not sure what happened with this one. The young man or young lady may have dropped it in the water, may have banged it up against a pier rail, just never quite sure. But we're going to find out. We're going to try and get this repaired and get this back into the program so that, well, other kids can learn how to fish. We're going to show you how to take this reel apart, how to service it, and hopefully how to keep it running for a long time to come. Before I start, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you like to learn about fishing reels, if you like to understand how they're made, who made them, when they were made, and well, how to keep them running for a long time to come, or give yours that are broken a second chance. Then this is the channel for you, and I appreciate all of the subscribers and how you help us make the channel better each and every day. Well, I took the adjuster cap off, and the first thing I noticed is we got a lot of water and rust in here. And I also noticed on the reel face itself there's a lot of rust. All of these screws are rusted, which says it's probably a steel and probably lightly coated at best. Now we'll get underneath that drag in a moment, but there's no sense servicing the drags if the reel has got a bigger problem to it than that. One of the issues you have with these reels is you don't have parts support. So if you have a broken reel, the only way that you're going to solve that problem is to find a donor reel. Fortunately, our club, well, they had about 20 or 25 of these, and as combos. They were in use for quite some time. And well, as the rod breaks, as the reel breaks, well, we get some spares around that we can grab some parts from time to time. All right, we've taken off the spool. We just removed the handle by removing the screw cap on the non-handle side and pulling this through the main gear. Now I want to remove the click ratchet, which lets you know that the line is spinning out, and there's a little transparent washer that I'm going to take off as well. That's the spool height adjuster. This little spring-driven device right here, that's what's going to make the noise when the spool is lining out against the drag, kind of a bait alarm. When I take my pieces and parts off, they go into a parts tray, and that helps me keep a good location and a handle on where those parts are when it's time to reinstall. You don't have to use the parts tray. I recommend that you have a system for dealing with all of the parts that you remove. And I recommend that you have that system before you start removing the parts. From time to time, I get what I call reel-in-a-bag projects in. Typically what's happened is people have started to take pieces and parts off, and then they realized they didn't have control over that, didn't have a plan for how to put the reel back together again, and well, put it all in a bag and sent it off to me. So the other suggestion I always make is to take some time and take pictures along the way. Like right now, we just opened it up. It seems simple enough, but open it up, take a look at what your anti-reverse setup is here, and then before you do much more, take a picture so that you know, well, for example, when it's time to put this back in, you don't invert it and put it on this way. That won't work. You need to know the top and the bottom. All right, there's a good amount of grease on that. I just removed that little swing. This is an eccentric driven anti-reverse. That little spring will pull it in and out, and there's grooves or ridges inside the rotor here, and those ridges will intersect with this end of the dog to stop the reel when it's pulled back. When I take this off, the first thing I generally like to do is to flood the bail on both arms with penetrating oil and let it seep in. That way, if there's any dirt or debris in there, you can loosen it up, and that's what you want to hear. You want to hear a nice, crisp snapback on the bail. If you're not hearing that, then you want to check to see Is the bail misshapen? Is it been bent out of alignment and somehow otherwise causing tension that would make it difficult for that bail to snap? Well, you saw that I took the rotor off. That's because you cannot remove this side plate without first taking the rotor off, because that screw that I just removed here is actually hiding under the rotor. So if you just pulled these 3 screws and tried to remove the side plate, it just wouldn't work. When I remove the screws, I put them on my table because I want to make sure they're all the same screw. Most of the time they're not. Most of the time a manufacturer will put a different screw somewhere in the side plate. And if you find that that's what's happened on your reel, make sure that you go ahead and note the location of that screw, because it will become important later. This one has a thinner screw for this top notch up here, so I just set that off to the side in my parts tray. With those screws removed, we should be able to remove the side plate. And I think what we're going to find here is, well, probably typical of what you find on something like, well, what we've used in our youth angler program. It's just dirty. It's dry. There is no maintenance that goes on with these. These are kind of taken out. We have a bunch of kids that we teach them how to cast, how to fish, and how to retrieve, and we put them in a hot shed until the next time. Well, that'll dry the grease out in a hurry, and that's what looks like it's happened here. You'll notice that this reel has got bushings on it, not bearings. Bushing on the main gear. There'll be a bushing on the other side as well. And to get to these so that we can properly lubricate it, we wanted to remove the screw on the crossline block, and now we should be able to pull up and out on the axle shaft. Once that is out, we can remove the crossline block from below. And I think all we're going to need here, I haven't seen any broken parts yet, so I think all we're going to need here is just some good cleaning, good lubrication, and reassembly. With the axle shaft out, we should be able to remove the main gear, remove the crossline block, and then there's 2 more screws up here. I hope I can get this one out. This one is holding a bearing here. And people ask me, well, what does a reel cost? $29 and some reels, and another reel costs $129, and what's the difference in those reels? Well, quite honestly, the differences in mechanically in the reels is just not that much. The pricing differences is usually in the components of the reel. So in this case, we have a plastic frame. We have steel bearings. This one looks like it's rusted. Get that out of there. Plastic case, what we call pot metal gears, as opposed to, say, CNC cut fancy metal alloy gears. But at the end of the day, a reel like this that's destined to teach a kid to fish will be used occasionally, and probably, I guess, what we would call light duty, is fine for the purpose that it was purchased for. So there's nothing wrong with getting a reel like this. Oftentimes I'll call these cabin reels because, well, they're there for somebody who's going to come by on a vacation, maybe just a weekend outing or something, and they want to go join in the fishing and don't have any tackle and equipment, and this is just kind of standing by. I took a vacation earlier this year, and I went to a cabin out in Pennsylvania, and sure enough, they had a bunch of reels there. Not these, they had a lot of the closed face bait casters and that, but they had a little lake on the property, and you know, if you just were visiting there and you weren't thinking about going fishing, didn't bring your own tackle, it's a wonderful way to spend the day and not worry that you weren't going to have something. All right, very simple setup, and yeah, so I kind of thought that was going to be shot, and it is. I'm going to put a little bit of penetrating oil here to clean this inner case on both sides. I'm going to turn my camera off for a moment. I'm going to go get that replacement bearing. Okay, well, I found a replacement bearing. It's a shielded bearing as opposed to one of these that's more open, and hopefully it, well, I know not hopefully, it will make this run a whole lot easier and smoother. And again, we're just trying to keep these things going. It's understood what this reel is and what the reel is used for. But if you wanted to hot rod this reel, you could measure these bushings and replace these bushings with bearings. Now, I don't know anybody who's done it, but it is possible to go do that if you wanted to. Well, I'm just mopping up now the old grease that's in there, cleaning out what I can of the debris. I'm going to take that bearing, I'm going to oil the bearing. It's got shields on it, so the oil will penetrate those seals. I want to take my pinion gear and I'm going to pull through on that with a hard brush. This is just one of these Harbor Freight or Home Depot or somebody's hardware store brand multi-packs where you have the brass, you have the wire brush, and you have the bristle brush. I use it for cleaning, and I've inspected the grooves. They're all in good shape, so we're going to just give it a nice healthy coat of fishing reel grease. Yes, fishing reel grease only. Put a little bit above the teeth where the bearing is going to ride. Let's put the bearing together. We can take our assembly and put that back into the case. It mounts below. Make sure you get that through the hole. And then those two screws, I wish I had a replacement screw for the one that's rusted, but I'm going to have to live with that. The two screws have wide lips on the top of them, and they act as a clamp to hold that bearing in place. We can go ahead and put that in now. So it's a very simple reel. It's got the main gear. Main gear is going to drive the pinion gear that we just put in. That's going to make the rotor go around. It's got a back drive on that main gear. It's going to drive the oscillation gear. That's going to make the axle shaft go up and down. And quite honestly, you have an eccentric driven anti-reverse. We'll put that on right now. Remember what we said the top was. That's going to pull in and out as you pedal the reel. When you back off, you'll see that tip comes out, and that's going to grab the ridge inside the rotor. So, all cool. All right, these are cleaned. We have the two bushing pieces. One goes in the back case. Now, sometimes when you're working with these plastic bushings, you're going to realize that there's a little tab on them. Not on this one in particular, but there'll be a tab on them. And if you find that tab, what you would most certainly do is align the tabs with the slots in the case to hold that bushing steady. I'll just put a little bit of grease onto the bushings on both sides. Then that's not going to help at all, but when you go through it with your main gear, that can become important. I'm going to take my time here. Again, I've checked the main gear. So I think this is performing poorly because the reel didn't have any oils or greases in it, and it had some dirt. So we'll see how we do. So if you have a fishing reel, doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter what the cost is, the key to giving it, maximizing its productive life is to keep it serviced. And you can see some of these reels, they don't take a lot of effort. Some do. This is kind of a reel that I guess would be viewed by many as disposable. In other words, when it runs out or it breaks, just toss it away. The price isn't that much, and if you got a year or two out of it, just go get another one. But that's not what Second Chance is all about. Second Chance is about keeping them fishing. All right, there is a shim washer on the main gear. Make sure you notice that. Then we can install the main gear in that bushing. Then sync it up with the oscillation gear in the back and with the crosswind gear below. All right. Light coating of grease onto your axle shaft. Don't put too much on there. It's only going to get scraped away when it goes through that pinion gear. Insert that and make sure that it is inside the crosswind block. Grab your tie down screw and put that back in. That's the wrong screw. That's an oops. That screw goes up top to hold the rotor nut from turning. This is the right screw. This is where the value of your parts tray is. I know I separated that, and unfortunately when I moved the crosswind block to go put it back in the reel, I lost the orientation of it for a moment. This one has the bushing greased, so we can just snap that back on. And when you do, make sure that all of the seams are nice and tight and that there's no stress on that. Well, we mentioned that there was one smaller screw that came up top, so that's the first one I'm going to put back in. And while I do that, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel, maybe you have some experiences on this reel that you want to share, just go ahead and do that. Just leave that in the comments section. And well, I'll try and do my best to answer those questions. Now generally, I try to answer those questions in the morning, so if you're leaving one in the evening, unless I'm not getting a good night's sleep, I would probably expect that that'll get answered sometime before noon Eastern time, generally around 9 to 10 in the morning, sometimes a little bit later depending on what I might be filming or what jobs or rushes or what have you inside the shop. But I do try to answer them. We've got one going on now with a Penn spin fisher reel. It's just got an odd noise to it, and we've been trying to take some time to figure that one out, but I'm sure we will over time. Okay, next up then we want to install the rotor. Now make sure you pull this in when you go to install the rotor. Bring the rotor over, and then if you didn't notice it, this is a reverse thread, so it means when you go to put it on, you're going to be putting it on counterclockwise, which is normally the way you would take it off. Put that on, tighten this up. So what have we done so far? We've completely taken the reel apart. We kind of identified what the cause of the failure is. That is that it just was devoid of greases and oils and the like. We showed you how to manage to that. And, well, how to grease it up, check the parts for damage, and clean it up, and now put it back together again. Alright, there's a tie-down screw that goes in that hole. That's the one I tried to put in the crosswind block before. Next up then, we'll take the handle and the handle screw. Now, this is an interchangeable handle, so if you want to put this on the right-hand side as opposed to the left-hand side, you can do that. It'll work either way. Actually, we have a few reels here from the Youth Angler program that, well, they're trying to switch the handles over and somebody dropped a piece. That's always fun. And I just noticed another issue here, so we're going to take a moment to undo this because I left a washer off. So again, another value of that take the picture program and the parts tray. If you find that you're back in your thinking you're done and you find another piece, oops, that's what it is. Alright, this washer goes on here. Now I can put that back on. Not a major detour. You have to have patience when you're doing fishing reel service and repair. You also have to have a sense of humor. Just recognize from time to time you're not going to remember everything. And from time to time, there's going to be nothing you can do to make the reel work, despite all of the efforts that you might be giving it. I've had a lot of projects come in that are reels that somebody had as a child, a reel that a favorite person gave them, maybe their dad or their uncle or their fishing buddy or something, and they want to restore it, and quite honestly they let the reel go too long and nothing can be done. And when that happens, it's kind of a shame, but you know what, you just got to realize sometimes the second chance that the reel has is in giving another reel an opportunity to move on by donating its pieces and parts. Okay, well, it didn't take too long on the detour there. I'm going to take the bait alarm or the click ratchet right now, put that down. Place the transparent line washer in there. And then before we put the spool back on, we'll take a look at what's going on in the drag system here. These drags are usually either Teflon or felt. I'll find out what's going here. That's one kind of salty one, and we have felt. So felt washers need to be kept lubricated, otherwise they're going to tear. This is a traditional 6 washer setup. Looks like the rusted parts were only confined to that top piece. I'm going to use some light steel wool, see if we can't buff that off. Now that's got no effect there whatsoever, so if it does have the ridges and the like, you can live with that. I'm going to grab a file. This is a microfile. Just to knock that off. Now the only thing that goes in here is that top cap, but if you can get rid of this, you will. The rest of these are in good condition and nice and smooth. So let's start the reassembly process then. We're going to put one of these felt washers down and take our fishing reel oil. You could use grease if you like, and just oversaturate that washer. There's 2 washers that look like this. One goes top, one goes bottom. It's called a keyed washer. The one in the middle here, again, totally dry, which again, this reel was totally dry, so no surprise there. And with the felt washers, nothing wrong with the felt washers. They're used on high-end reels too. I mean, the Penn Fierces, earlier editions, the Shimano Stratix, others use the felt washers. And unless you're tearing them up, they're fine. If you do find out that you're tearing them up, maybe you're fighting bigger fish than they were designed for, you can always switch over to a Carbon Tex replacement washer to solve that issue. All right, took care of the washers. Let's mount the spool. Grab the star adjuster. We'll give it a test. See how we did. Hopefully we'll keep this reel fishing, and another youth angler will have a chance to learn how to cast and how to catch fish. Let's take a look. Oh, look at that. What a difference. Just like that. You're hearing a click, click, and that's because this annoying little monofilament line is on here. That's pushing up against the bail. But look at that. Oh, nice. Free and easy, nice spinning reel. Turning beautifully. All right, let's make sure that that bail that we oiled, look at that. Boy, it's like it's almost new. And that's had a lot of time on the water with the kids. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. And now you know how to service the Shakespeare Tiger 50 fishing reel. I want to spend a minute here to thank our first responders, our police, fire, safety, rescue, and everybody dedicated to public service. I never get tired of saying that. I want to thank you, the viewers, for watching, for commenting, and making this channel what it is. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing everybody a great day.